Hi, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Parsons Entrepreneur Academy.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Looking forward to sharing your story with our audience. So let's jump right into it. So, give us some background about you and how you made your transition into entrepreneurship.
I just realized that men of color grow in isolation, and I blossomed, I guess, early in life. I had some really great jobs in my 20s, branded marketing, oversaw, $1 million plus budget that I could have allocated to, health and wellness initiatives across New York City. And then I went to the new school, graduated with a master's in urban policy, and then I worked in city government where I was the policy advisor to the executive staff at the Department of Correction, and also, advising City Hall on best practices on how to reduce recidivism, but also, what does criminal justice look like currently, and also how do you create a more fair and equity system in criminal justice in New York City and across the world, right? So it's like I was in these powerful rooms, shaping policy, shaping the direction of the city, and then I just realized that I was just mainly like the only black person in the room, right? So then I was really on this quest to help to solve this isolation problem amongst like black professionals, but then also how do I bring the community together so that we could tackle our issues and address it head on.
That's so amazing. So you're a serial entrepreneur, right? On top of all of the amazing things that you've accomplished. Let's break down the different businesses that you've started. So there's Groom Success. So start off by telling us a little bit about that, and then we can talk about Gentleman's Factory because there are connections between the two.
Sure. Well, so Groom Success is a professional development servicing company that provides training workshops to young men and women of color within New York City. And that's the school system, that's the jails, that's the housing projects, etc. And we contract with government to provide these services, right? So now it's like, oftentimes you would see that government contracts with non-black owned businesses to provide services to the black community. Whereas now Groom Success, we say, hey, give us the contracts because we understand the needs of our community. And, we now also create an ecosystem around that so that we could, tackle our issues head on, right? We're a minority owned certified business with the city and with the state, and we've done projects with the detention centers where there's entrepreneur programs there, also on Rikers Island where we have a robust entrepreneurship program, and we also are in the schools, right? So we've done contracts. So we've actually, had over 2,000 students that we've, provide services for. So we're constantly growing, and then we want to make sure that the city is equitable for everyone and not just a certain few.
At what point did you not segue, but along that journey of starting and growing everything that you're doing at Groom Success, at what point did you decide to start Gentleman's Factory, and what was that process like?
So the black community isn't a monolith, right? So you have those who are court involved. You have those who are trying to navigate the professional scene. You have those who are executives, but then they're the only ones in that room, and anyone asks them, how do they feel? Like, what do you go through? And then you have those in the middle, right? So there's so the Black community is multifaceted, and you can't just have one methodology to help advance that particular segment. So we use Groom Success, and we contract with the city to provide services. And also then, with the Gentleman's Factory, we then saw that, oh, like what's being done for working class professionals, and where do they go? And we realized that no one really cares so much about that population, because it's like, hey, like if you are not, if you are not on public assistance, you're fine, right? You don't have any issues. You're good. Congratulations. You have a college degree. Woo, you've made it. But in reality, I'm fine, but I'm tired of surviving. I want to thrive, but there aren't enough spaces that allows me to thrive, will put resources behind me to be the best version of myself. So, we're just tired of status quo. We really want to continue to thrive, but we're just thriving in isolation. And if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, come together.
I was reading about your process of conducting interviews and really digging deep and realizing that there was this need for men of color to have this space to share resources and to lift each other up. Tell us a bit more about what the experience is like in the Gentleman's Factory. What does a member of the Gentleman's Factory get to partake in?
Number one is we've curated a space that is very specific to the needs of our population. So, in here now, so we're at the Gentleman's Factory, and every book that you see is very specific. Every piece of furniture, even the way that we structured the space, it is a space that Black men specifically don't have to fit in, but it's a space that's built for them in mind, right? And spaces like that don't really exist, like we have to fit in everywhere that we go, right? But whoever asks, like, let's create a space that fits you. So that's really what our physical space entails, right? Is the very details of how do we advance and celebrate the Black experience, right? And when you look at this on the wall right here, it says Black excellence, right? And it defines that, So we have another painting of Malcolm X, right? We have another painting upstairs of different, heroes that we celebrate, So that's one. But then number two, like it's really the programming, right? So obviously COVID occurred, so we transitioned everything to digital. The majority of things digital, and then we can speak a little bit more about that later on if the opportunity presents itself. But but it's really the programming in the community that's really celebratory and very specific to the very needs that we need so that we could continue to thrive.
And tell us, like, what types of programming do you do?
Oh, wow. So a wide combination, right? So we focus on a lot of business, but then we also focus on personal, right? So fatherhood programming. So 2 days ago, we had an event on how do you raise teenagers, right? Because we have a lot of dads, and now they have teenagers. So now they're asking, hey, what are the apps that I can use to make sure that I'm still monitoring my child's phone because I just got her a new phone, right? From that retrospect to, how do I become a better father? How do I become a better husband? We want to make sure that, we create a community around that. But then also too, we also just had a conversation about, hey, the stock market. Like, what are your thoughts on what happened with Robinhood, and GameStop, right? And, we have members who are senior executives on Wall Street, and they were having a conversation about their experience and what's best practices, and what's being discussed, you know yeah, like amongst the leaders in that space, right? So our content really speaks on how do we make sure that we're constantly learning with each other, and positioning ourselves for the future. And we really based our content on what members need. So we're always hosting, having surveys and focus groups so that we could better understand what your needs are, so that we could create this platform for you to be the best version of yourself.
So within your membership community, you have attracted a diverse range of career profiles in your membership. Can you give us an idea of the types of professionals who are a part of the Gentleman's Factory Network?
Tech, finance, media, construction, law enforcement, civil service. We have a member who is a former rocket scientist. We have guys that work at Boston Consulting Group and McKinsey, and firefighters and engineers and college students, and guys who went to Parsons, guys who went to Harvard Business School, guys who went to community college, guys who didn't go to college, guys that work for, guys that drive the B-41, to guys that is running for public office, right? And I say that to say that I was very specific in not creating this elitist space where you have just one caliber of a guy that went to Stanford, right? And the gentleman that is a great father and a great husband, but who didn't go to college, but who is a blue collar worker but wants to learn more about stocks. Where does he go to, right?
Right.
Because the gentleman who went to Stanford or who went to Harvard Law, is about to be a dad, right? So where is he going to learn about that? Does he need to only learn about fatherhood from someone who went to Stanford? Absolutely not, right? The gentleman that is a blue collar worker can teach him a whole lot about fatherhood, right? While the gentleman that went to Harvard Law can teach him about the legalities of cryptocurrency or something, right? You know what I mean? So I'm saying all of that to say that there's value in everyone, and the qualifier isn't how much money is in your bank account, but the qualifier is how do you view the world, and are you a forward thinker, and are you looking to move forward? And forward needs to be defined by you. So forward could mean, hey, you know what, like this year I'm trying to lose 10 pounds, or this year I'm trying to buy 15 properties. You define what that is.
That's amazing. That's how you build a community that's truly inclusive, that can benefit from each other's different walks of life. That's awesome. So I love your story around how you raised money at the beginning of this journey. Can you tell us a bit more about that? This is always a point of topic that is mysterious to a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when it comes to, the term raising friends and family. It could mean a lot of things. It doesn't literally have to be like your friends, but you have you've experienced a version of that. So tell us more.
Yeah, well, so I resigned September 30th, 2016. Wow, so that was about like 5 years ago, right? Going on 5 years. Wow. And in that, before I left, I went to a group of close friends and I said, listen, I never want to go back to work again, ever, 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 ever. And not because I was getting fired, not because I didn't like my job. I was doing some historical things, but I said that I wanted to dedicate my life into finding innovative solutions that enhances the quality of life of people of color all across planet Earth, right? How do I do that? I don't know. But I know that I'm devoting my life to finding that, right? And I said, if I ever run into a financial hardship, would you guys back me? And they said yes. And if I run into an opportunity, would you guys back me? I said yes. And then they said yes. And that's what made me feel comfortable. That's what made my wife feel comfortable. But then I also realized as I look back 5 years later, is that how would they invest so much money into me? It was because they knew that I was serious and they knew that I wasn't playing around. And they knew that I've built so much relationship with them that they knew that if Jeff is taking on this endeavor, that this must be something that will work, right? So yeah, I mean, so initially, like I raised $100,000. I just made sure that I was around folks who had the means, right? Who could invest 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, right? And it's important to be around those circles because when you're raising your first friend and family round, it's around people who you've built relationships with, right? So I can't emphasize enough how important relationships are because it's in those relationships where you'll get your opportunities. And if you don't have a strong network, join the Gentleman's Factory, right? But no, but yeah, I mean, so that was the initial round of raising money, and then where we're going in now, we're pivoting from having commercial spaces, but we're going into the real estate model where we're going to be buying properties throughout New York City and throughout the country, and in that we're going through our members, right? So we're buying this building in Brooklyn, and we're also buying a building in Harlem, but we're literally pulling our money together. And some folks are putting in 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, etc. And whatever it is that you have, right? So that we can come together. So I'm saying all of this to say that if you look at group economics and your network and being not afraid to ask, especially if you're an entrepreneur, because we tend to not want to get rejected. Oh, hell no. I mean, I've been getting rejected all my damn life. You know what I'm saying? So the fear of rejection is what limits a lot of people, but particularly entrepreneurs. So I feel comfortable now asking someone for 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, $1 million or whatever, because that barrier of rejection is no longer hovering over me, right? So that's really how we're able to grow, is because, we have a vision, we have a North Star, and we're asking people to support us.
The power of networks, people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Build a good network.
Yep.
Right now, co-working spaces are on the rise. The global co-working market is estimated at about $26 billion. So over the past few years, we've seen a lot of Black-owned spaces pop up, or spaces that are being created to be more inclusive for people of color. For anyone who's watching, who might be considering starting a community-based or membership-based type of business model, what advice would you give to them? What should they keep in mind and hold to as they build a business that is aiming to serve a particular community?
What I would say is that niche markets is key, right? And I'll give you an example. Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry is a billionaire, right? Not every Black person likes Tyler Perry's content,
Right.
right? You know what I'm saying? There is a specific segment of the Black community that loves Tyler Perry. As a result, Tyler Perry then hyper focused on that specific community. And look at where he is, So many other organizations, so many other people also fit that niche, that niche market, right? And then obviously, it's good to expand from there if you so choose to. But niche markets are totally fine, right? I think that it's important that you constantly ask, what problem is it that you're solving? And is that problem big enough for your target audience or your target community, And yeah, so I think that a lot of times, people are saying, oh man, like, I want to create a product or service for everybody. Yes, that's great. But remember, Facebook started off with students at Harvard, and then they went to the Ivy League, and then they went to other colleges, and then they went to only colleges, and then they went to everybody, and then, continue beyond. And now there are kids, like my two children have Facebook Messenger, but it's private, and they're only speaking with their cousins. But yeah, like, JJ and Olivia have Facebook Messenger, right? So, 15 years later, Facebook and my mom, and my father, like my father's 74, like a 74 Haitian man, whom I love so dearly, is on Facebook, right? But originally it wasn't for my dad or my mom, right? It was for Harvard grads, right? So I'm saying that to say that, you want to make sure that as you're developing your businesses or business, that you start with who is it that you want to target and then grow from there.
Yeah, there's that saying, there are riches in the niches.
Yep, yep. Absolutely.
Going back to the section where you were describing the interdisciplinary, cross-generational aspect of your community, like there's such an important aspect to being able to not only seek mentorship levels above you, but also amongst your peers. And I could see how your community is fostering that. For you personally, did you have key mentors along this journey? And could you tell us a bit more about that and how you nurtured those relationships and the impact that it's had on your journey?
I am definitely not someone who did this all by myself. And it takes a village to raise a child, right? So I've definitely had mentors and have mentors previously and have mentors now because everybody have knowledge gaps, right? And if you think that you know everything and if you think that you know it all, then in reality you don't know anything, because I'm pretty sure that Bill Gates has a mentor. Warren Buffett has a mentor right now. Zuckerberg has a mentor right now, and I remember, like 15 years ago, my pastor at the time, and who was like this like real big like preacher, and he was on TV and all of that. And mind you, this was like 15 years ago. So like 15 years ago is me. I think I was like 20 at the time. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is like my pastor. I love him so much. And, it's a mega church. And I remember he was preaching it, and he was like, yeah, so, like I was speaking to my mentor earlier on today, and I'm like, wait, you got a mentor? Like, aren't you like the man? So when he said that he had a mentor, that really opened my eyes, especially for me at the time when I was like 19, 20. So it really resonated with me to know that regardless of how high you are, you need someone to help guide you in the next direction and in the next level that you're trying to go into. So for me, I have so many different mentors, so many different advisors. Also have a therapist. I have a speech coach. I have a marriage counselor. You know what I'm saying? I have so many different advisors around me that's helping me to navigate through life because you just can't do this by yourself.
You got your tribe together.
Yes, 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 absolutely, absolutely. Like, and then I even got my guys on a group text, right? You know what I'm saying? Like like I got guys that I grew up with, who took different paths than but I still stay connected, right? Because I need to know what's going on in their side of the world. You know what I mean? So it's really important that you have so many different vantage points that will inform your decision making.
Amazing. So looking back at everything that you have built and accomplished to date, what would you say are the top 3 lessons that you've learned as an entrepreneur?
Lesson number one is don't be afraid to ask, because if you do not ask, then you will not get, right? And that took me a while because, like I wasn't conditioned to, ask for things, right? As a Haitian immigrant, I was taught that I can't, you know, be so pressed with people, and I gotta, continue to persevere because I'm strong, right? And you can't show people that you're weak. So weakness, the way that it was interpreted to me, was vulnerability, but I think now as an entrepreneur, I think vulnerability can arguably be a strength if you acknowledge it and if you position it well and if you package it well. Because people love transparency, and people love also to help those who are going places but just need some assistance. So I think that, that's number one. Number two is time, right? Managing time. I always thought that, to be a good entrepreneur, you have to work, 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 work. But then I realized that, like my best ideas come when I'm well rested and when I have the ability to think. So before I would do a whole lot of like sleepless nights and, have my, laptop out when I come home because I'm just grinding. I don't really do that much anymore. Granted, I mean, there are times and instances where I still do, like sleepless nights, but not as much anymore because I realized that, the quality of a person that I become during that time isn't really that great. And that's not good for anyone. That's not good for my thoughts. That's not good for my family. That's not good for the business. And I'm burnt out, right? So, I always need to, take breaks so that I could come back with a fresh set of eyes. And then lastly, again, is community. You can't do this by yourself. You need a team to, help you accomplish your next level. And, I think that entrepreneurs initially, they're like, oh my God, like this is my baby, this is my baby, this is my baby. Oh my God. No, like it shouldn't be your baby. It should be something that you're producing onto the world so that the world could be better, right? And that you're solving a problem. And you can't be solving your own problem. You should be solving a problem for a community or for a consumer base. So that this is my baby, get that out of your mind. Because if you think like that, then you're going to be so focused on you and not the broader mission. And obviously, you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself. So get a good attorney, get a good accountant, get a good lawyer, or whatever. But this like emotional attachment that you have to what is it that you're building, you want to make sure that you um, get that out of your system so that it can grow outside of you.
That's great advice. I think number three is going to be hard for a lot of people.
It's hard for me. Yeah, like it took me 4 years, right? So this is a more mature Jeff, right? You know what I mean? This is definitely a more mature Jeff. The Jeff from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even early last year, probably would be like, Jeff, the hell you talking about? You know what I mean? But now as I'm maturing, like I really see things from a different lens now.
So tell us, Jeff Lindor, entrepreneur, who are two entrepreneurs that you're inspired by and why?
I would say Tristan Walker, Bevel, black man, grew up in Queens, and he is somebody, went to Stanford, also was in Silicon Valley, created this really great company called Bevel, and it's grooming services. And if you never heard of Bevel, make sure that you go to Target or just Google them and buy a Bevel product because it's amazing. But the reason why like I'm really inspired by him, it was because one, like he's around my age, maybe a little bit older, but I remember, seeing him on Fast Money and in the New York Times and all of these different publications, and then just learning about his story, it really made, so I saw myself in Tristan. I was like, oh wow, like this is me, right? And when I say this is me, it's not Jeff Lindor, but this is like Black young millennials who are going in that realm. So, Tristan at the time, especially when I first started, I was like, oh my God, like, I had him on like Google alerts, right? Like any article or anything that he was doing, I was always alerted because that's where I got my inspiration from, just seeing someone who's just been opening so many doors for Black people, particularly Black men. I
Mhm.
saw him as just like that, like catalyst for change. So him, that's one. Two, there were just so many other like Black men and women entrepreneurs. Morgan from Blavity and Ryan Wilson from The Gathering Spot and Song from Squire, right? So like 80s babies, right? Like those are definitely my inspirations because I see myself in them, and their success is my success. So when any of them raise $10 million, $50 million, or acquire a company or get acquired, that's celebratory for me. And then last thing I'll say is that the gentleman from Calendly,
Yeah, he's amazing.
yeah, right. And he has a $3 billion valuation now, right? So just seeing him is super inspiring. And two other gentlemen that I would say is Ray McGuire, who is running for mayor of New York City, but just the track record that he had on Wall Street is just seeing him be one of the most successful people on Wall Street, and not just a successful Black person on Wall Street, right? But the most successful person on Wall Street is inspiring. And also Charles Phillips, who is a Black man, who was the president at Oracle, and he sat on the board of Oracle, and then left Oracle, and now started, led a company called Infor. Infor got sold, and now Charles sits on the board of CBS Viacom, American Express, chair of the board of the Apollo and Compass. And, so I'm mentioning all of these people because that's just a small sample size of the brilliance of Black men and women who don't get recognized as much. And society thinks that we don't exist, but we do, right? And we're trailblazers and we're doing a lot of really great work. So that's who inspire me.
Thank you for sharing your list of Black excellence.
Yes. Totally, totally, totally.
So before we wrap up, I would like to know what's your ultimate vision for Gentleman's Factory, and what should we be looking out for next?
So, Gentleman's Factory is going to be one of the largest real estate holders on planet Earth, right? So, we're purchasing our properties, and Gentleman's Factories are going to be our tenant, right? So, Gentleman's Factory owns the building, but then Gentleman's Factory is also the tenant. But now that's just one side of the business. But then the other side of the business is what is being done in these buildings, right? So innovation is happening, connections are happening, raising money is happening, people growing personally and professionally is happening, information gathering is happening, and not only from our physical end but from our digital end, right? We're creating a phygital experience, right? Physical and digital,
Oh,
where
yeah, that's the first time I've heard that.
yeah, right. Phygital, right? So it's physical and digital where, we connect locally, but we grow globally. So we build locally and then we connect globally. You know what I mean? So it's important that, there's a Gentleman's Factory presence in all local communities where there's a large population of Black and brown people, so that, we're assembling the Avengers in every community. And then we also have And then we also own real estate in there so that we can have an even stronger voice, because landowners are, certainly recognized more. And America, you know, respects property owners, right? And there's a lot of historical context to that. So we want to make sure that we're not just leasing, but we are owning, right? So that's one end. But then also, we're also investing in each other's businesses, and we're investing in each other's, professional development, right? So, we're here to stay. We're here to stay, and we're looking forward to continuing to grow.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your grand vision. You put it out into the universe. I'm looking forward to seeing it all come into fruition. Uh, this was such an inspiring interview. I'm inspired. So I know that our audience is also going to be inspired. Thank you
Yes.
so much for joining us
Yeah.
on the Parsons Entrepreneur Academy Network, Jeff.
So last thing that I would say, right? Shameless plug, everyone. Follow us on Instagram. So it's at Performance Factory. And I just want to say thank you so much for reaching out. You're absolutely fantastic, and I applaud all of the really great work that you're doing. And any way that I could add value, please let me know. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you so much, Jeff.